Germany's mountains. From the Alps to Saxonian Switzerland and the world-famous Black Forest. There are animals here hardly anyone has ever seen. This is a journey from mysterious mountain forests to the remotest peaks. Deep in southern Germany lies the Berchtesgaden National Park, the country's only nature reserve in the Alps. Craggy, mountainous terrain over an area the size of the city of Seattle. In the shadow of Mount Watzmann, the marmots are emerging from their hibernation. The females are only fertile 1 day a year, so right now the male isn't leaving his mate's side for a second. Young males are marauding, trying to take over colonies from more senior marmots. Fights like these often result in the new rulers killing the offspring of the old. This is just a harmless family spat. After the thaw, there's food in abundance for the chamois, and it's not unknown for high-spirited kids to lose sight of their mothers in all the excitement. But when hunger calls, they all find their way back. The days only gradually grow warmer. The peaks are in clear air, the cold ground shrouded in mist, a meteorological phenomenon known as inversion. This is the time when the few remaining specimens of a particularly rare bird perform duels in the higher parts of the Black Forest. Capercaillies. Behavior as ostentatious as this can only be observed in the mating season. Recognizable by the white feather in its fanned-out tail, a challenger has entered the arena. During the mating season, a spike in the testosterone content of their blood makes capercaillies particularly aggressive. The pushy neighbor has incurred the alpha male's displeasure. The challenger wants to know who the real king of the castle is. It hesitates. Each bird is about 1 meter tall and weighs 5 kilos. The challenger takes the initiative. The aim is to peck the opponent in the red, especially sensitive areas of skin above the eyes. The dominant cock parries the attacks and stands its ground. For the challenger, all that remains is to withdraw. The hen can't make up its mind between the two cocks, so that's it for today. Germany's mountains increase in number as one moves from north to south towards the Alps. At last, spring arrives. In eastern Germany lies Saxonian Switzerland, which was created from a huge sandstone plate. As the earth moved, cracks opened into which water could flow. Rain and streams washed the stone away, leaving behind single cliffs and stony towers. The cliffs are a paradise for rare raptors. Peregrine falcons. This pair have made their nest on a ledge. In the 1970s, the birds had died out here and didn't return until, in 1989, a program of reintroduction to the wild began. The young are brought up almost exclusively on a diet of pigeons and songbirds. For 6 weeks, the parent birds bring food before the young leave the nest. At the moment, it's still being portioned into bite-sized chunks. At a spot specially chosen for the purpose, the second adult is preparing a pigeon for its young, removing the feathers and innards. This way, the nest stays clean. As one goes, the other comes. The never-ending deliveries of food mean the young will grow up strong. "250 kilometers to the west, along the former inner German border, lie the highest mountains in the north of the country, the Harz. The Harz region takes its name from the old word for mountain forest, and its upper reaches are dominated by firs. Below 700 meters, it's mostly beech trees. The Harz is home not only to Germany's smallest birds, like wrens, but also the country's biggest cat. A mother lynx and its 2 cubs. The last lynx in the Harz was shot by hunters just under 200 years ago. It wasn't until the turn of the millennium that environmentalists reintroduced the animal to the region. As with most cats, lynxes are single mothers, which keeps them busy all day long. When picked up by the scruff of the neck, the cubs keep still so as not to hurt themselves. Thereafter, it's business as usual. The cubs are just 8 weeks old. They'll spend a good year with their mother. There are a lot of dangers to overcome before they're grown up. Only 1 in 5 cubs survive. One day, red deer will be the young lynx's prey. This calf is 8 weeks old, and its only protection is its mother. For the curious young animal, everything is strange and new. But at the slightest noise, it's straight back to mum. In a cliff face, a pair of eagle owls have made their nest. Life for the 4-week-old chicks mainly consists of waiting. Waiting for the next meal. But that won't be until tonight, when Dad gets back. On the German-French border lies the Palatinate Forest. The red sandstone cliffs are the remains of a seabed deposited by an ocean more than 250 million years ago. It's summer, and the colourful mountain meadows are buzzing with insect life. On the eastern edge of the Palatinate Forest lie the vineyards of the German wine route. In mid-May, sandy escarpments lure sunseekers, returning from their winter quarters in Africa. Bee-eaters. The male is digging out a nesting hole in the soft sand. His industry is designed to impress a female. Once regarded as extinct in Germany, over the last 30 years, bee-eaters have returned to warmer regions of the country. The suitor has to catch a bridal gift for his mate, ideally an insect. Proudly, he flies a lap of honor with his catch. Whether it pleases his beloved remains to be seen. Expertly, he removes the bee sting. Homemade comes from the heart. Rejected. Maybe the engagement gift was too prickly after all. Time for a second attempt. A replacement gift is quickly found. A sting-free hoverfly. Accepted. The male has grasped what the female wants. After further gifts, the marriage can at last be consummated. Gradually, day turns to evening. In the cliff face, the owlets are still waiting to be fed. The offspring are already so big and hungry that the parents now have to go on an extra hunt at twilight. The largest owl in the world sets out on its next foray. The owl's ears hear not only from which direction a noise comes, but also the exact distance. The gathering darkness brings more and more animals out of hiding. A bank vole is looking for food. Just missed. The vole is in luck. The owlets will have to be patient until one of their parents returns with something to eat. Europe's highest mountains, the Alps, were created 135 million years ago. Mighty tectonic forces turned a primeval ocean floor into a mountain range 100 kilometers wide. Today, beneath the hooves of ibexes lie petrified sea creatures. At the beginning of July, the baby marmots leave the den for the first time. As yet, they have no idea of the dangers that await them. With offspring to feed, the golden eagle is always on the lookout for prey. At once, warning cries go up from members of the marmot clan. But how much attention they attract depends on clan hierarchy. This time, the chain of alarm worked. Back in the Palatinate Forest. The young eagle owls have left the protection of their niche in the cliff and are exploring their surroundings. Not yet fully able to fly, they haven't quite reached fledgling status. The peregrine falcons, too, have left the nest. The young birds will stay in their parents' territory for another 2 months, then look for their own. Hard to believe that these birds begging for food will one day be the fastest hunters in the skies. Peregrines achieve speeds of over 200 kilometers an hour when diving for the kill. At some point, the parents will no longer return to feed. That is the moment when the young birds have to start hunting for themselves. Saxonian Switzerland is part of the Elbe Sandstone Mountains, a range extending as far as the Czech Republic. In summer, the plateaus are hot and dry and support almost no vegetation. Crumbling sandstone collects on cliff ledges, creating miniature dunes and deserts. Ants have trouble dealing with the shifting surface. Perfect conditions for ant lions. These rapacious insect larvae set funnel-like traps for their prey. Anything falling into the funnel has almost no hope of getting out again. This ant is fighting for its life. The antlion leaves nothing to chance and scatters sand onto its prey. The victim is faced with an avalanche of scree. Extreme slow motion is needed to see how the hunter shakes the ant, presumably to pump more poison into its hapless prey. Finally, the antlion drags the ant down into the depths to suck it dry. In the Palatinate Forest, old castles sit atop the hills, as here at Trifels, on the 500-meter-high Sun Mountain. Not much remains of Castle Dragoncliff. According to the saga of the Nibelungen, this was where Siegfried became a dragon slayer. In summer, young bee-eaters leave the nest. Untiringly, the adult birds call to their offspring to lure them out of the nesting holes. The baby of the family doesn't seem to have the necessary confidence yet. And no amount of tempting with a nice fat hoverfly will help. The parents relent and provide one final meal on wings. About 1/5 of breeding pairs get help in bringing up their offspring. Mostly this assistance comes from children of earlier broods, which help build nest holes and feed the young. This strategy means that twice the number of fledglings are able to leave the nest than would without help. There are 100 breeding pairs of bee-eaters on the wine route. If they continue to breed successfully, this figure could rise. In the forests of the Harz, temperatures are falling. The hinds and their calves seek the protection of the herd. Safety in numbers. The lynx is not hunting. The deer seem to sense this and carry on grazing in peace. The predator wouldn't otherwise move so openly through the countryside. The lynx caught one of the hinds the previous night. At this time of year, it needs a lot of food for its cubs, which are now fairly big. This spot is probably too exposed for the lynx. It needs all its strength to drag off the dead prey, which weighs a good 40 kilos, more than the lynx itself. For the time being, the cubs remain under cover. Lynxes usually make do with smaller roe deer. This spot seems perfect. The female has 3 cubs to provide for. Right now, catching prey as large as this is excellent timing. The cubs eat as much as they can. A hind like this will keep them going for 3 days. The mother lynx finds a vantage point from which to watch over the feeding place. The female with the blue earmark was introduced into the wild in 2002. That she then went on to have young is a measure of the success of her integration. The Black Forest. Its highest mountain is the Feldberg, at almost 1,500 meters. The most spectacular view can be enjoyed from the Belchen, with its bald summit. In the owl's nest in the cliff face, all is quiet. The chicks are almost fully grown. They now go hunting by themselves. On sunny days in Saxonian Switzerland, the warmth even penetrates into the ravines. Dormice are most active on summer nights. The animals are only awake 6 months of the year, barely enough time to put on the fat they need for the other 6 months of hibernation. Young dormice are very nervous. The nest in the cliff niche is their refuge, but hunger keeps tempting them out. Unstintingly, they search cracks and crevices for something to eat. Ripe raspberries are a delicacy which the mother mouse would rather keep for herself. Berries alone, however, are insufficient to build up the necessary reserves. Proteins are vital. Slugs protect themselves against attack with lots of slime, which is why most animals leave the mollusks well alone. Dormice, however, roll slugs expertly back and forth in their paws to remove most of the slime. What's left is a healthy portion of protein. The meal can then be enjoyed in the shelter of the cliff. Gradually, autumn arrives in Saxonian Switzerland. Around the Bastei rock formation, the leaves are changing colour. In the Middle Ages, the towering rocks were part of the defences of Neuraten Castle. On the wooded crags of the Palatinate Forest, it's mating time for the mouflons, ancient ancestors of our modern sheep. The ram is trying to sniff out a sexually mature ewe. This is the only time that the rams join the herds of ewes and try to keep rivals at bay. Once they find a ewe prepared to mate, they just won't give up. If the conception was successful, the ewe will give birth next March. A good 400 kilometers to the north lie the Weser uplands. Here, too, it's mating season. The red deer have gathered for the rut. The hinds scarcely have time to graze. The alpha stag is constantly on the move, bringing its harem together. Always mindful of the danger of losing its hinds to a rival. All it manages to do here, however, is drive the hind into the arms of a young stag. A mistake that must be corrected at once. In a nearby hollow, a stag is taking a mud bath. The sticky mixture of mud and fur is perfect protection against ticks, lice, mosquitoes, and other pests. Germany's highest mountains are in the Alps. The Zugspitze is almost 3,000 meters high, and the tree line in the Berchtesgaden National Park is at a height of 1,800 meters. Above that is ibex territory. The animals are regarded as symbols of the Berchtesgadener Alps. In contrast to other alpine regions, however, their presence here is very recent. It wasn't until the 20th century that the wild goats were established here. Since then, the animals have multiplied successfully in the remoter parts of the park. It won't be long now before the first snowfall of winter. High time for the marmots to finish building their nests. The young are facing their first hibernation. Late autumn in Germany's highlands. In the Harz, mating season for the red deer is coming to an end. For weeks, the mighty animals have been giving it their all. Now they're exhausted. The roaring that echoes through the forest is becoming rarer. The season has cost the biggest stags most of their reserves. There's not much time left for them to put on the fat they need for the winter. This elderly stag went down fighting. The hole was probably caused by a rival's antlers. It isn't long before the body is discovered. Ravens are extremely cautious. They'll wait for days to see if a cadaver presents any kind of danger before they dare to approach it. If the coast is clear, they'll then appear in numbers. In a few days, all that remains of the stag will be bones. Ravens feeding on a cadaver is a rare sight, and one only likely to be seen in a national park, where trophy hunting is forbidden. Only here can older animals die a natural death. At some point, the view that there's enough to eat for everybody prevails, and the raven clan calms down. The slopes are now increasingly obscured by mist. The sun isn't strong enough to get the damp air to rise, and the first hoarfrost forms. The frost has no effect on the silver firs, which have their own antifreeze in the needles. Their leathery, wax-covered skin prevents them drying out. Fir needles can stand the cold up to minus 28 degrees Celsius. Fir seeds need weeks of cold weather to be able to germinate properly the following spring. In the Alps, the first snow fell as early as September. Now the peaks are covered in a thick carpet of white. Herbivores like the chamois have a hard time finding food. The hungry animals even scratch lichen off stones, with every spur being minutely examined. In the Black Forest, too, winter has taken hold. The summit of Mount Candle, 1,200 meters high. Further south, Mount Belchen is living up to its nickname of the Shiner. In the background are the Alps. The red deer have withdrawn to lower-lying territory. Finding food now takes a lot of time, so they're up very early. To save energy, they reuse tracks in the snow. Fir needles alone won't suffice to get through the winter. The animals need peace and quiet in their difficult search for food. For this reason, in certain regions like the Harz, they're not hunted in winter. Some bark, a meager meal. Animals without enough reserves will have a tough time in the cold season. Not being limited to a vegetarian diet has its advantages. The young lynx is now almost as big as its parent. However, only one of the 3 cubs born to the mother animal with the blue earmark has survived. It appears well fed and has a chance of surviving the winter. In their nest, the dormice have their own survival strategy. 5 of them have formed a community for the hibernation period. The little rodent's heartbeat and body temperature are reduced to the minimum necessary. From time to time, one awakes. Within an hour, its pulse rises to over 200 beats per minute. Why this happens is a mystery. The dormouse checks its surroundings and makes itself comfortable again. Then its body switches back to economy mode and returns to a deep hibernatory sleep from which it won't emerge for another 6 months. In the Harz, a lynx has made a kill and is just returning to the snow-covered cadaver to eat in peace. For the capercaillie, too, it's time to eat. Lynxes don't like being watched when feeding. In the end, hunger wins out. After all, for the lynx, the prey is dough to go. Capercaillies are cold weather and snow specialists. A pound of fir needles a day is all they need. Apart from a few bizarre snowmen, the mountains are deserted. Winter now also reigns in Saxonian Switzerland. These mighty cliffs once supplied the raw material for the Frauenkirche, the Zwinger Palace, and many other magnificent buildings in Dresden. With the spring, the sun regains strength. Winter aconites and snowdrops start to peek through the melting, icy carpet. The moisture in the ravines evaporates. With mating cries and fluttering jumps, the capercaillie once again starts to woo the females. The cock loves a grand entrance and thus chooses to perform in the pristine whiteness of the snowy field. Only the highest-ranking bird is allowed to pleasure the females. And even then, it still has to prove itself. With a bit of luck, these two will have offspring, which would be good for the future of this threatened species. The eagle owls are one step ahead. The female is already brooding and won't leave the nest for another month. In the meantime, its mate will keep it supplied with food. On velvet paws, the lynx is once again roaming its mountain territory. The return of these beautiful creatures after an absence of 130 years is a great benefit. The animals in the highlands are as varied as the landscapes they live in. Nature reserves secure their protection and in turn their habitat, here in the mountains of Germany.